Baylor is a top fighter in the boxing world. His opponents, old and young, professional and amateur, white and black, were all beaten to a pulp by his relentless iron fists. Yet this fighter became prey in a brutal manhunt organized by a group of wealthy but depraved individuals. With only a bottle of water in hand, Baylor must fight to survive in the jungles of Myanmar, facing off against hunters armed with modern weapons and backed by the corrupt local military. So what led Baylor to become entangled in this situation? Will he ultimately be able to escape their deadly hunt? Everything goes back to 6 months earlier, when Baylor was still just a fighter like any other. He had a close friend named Johnny. Both of them were big moneymakers in the fighting arenas. Whenever they showed up, the stands were always packed. They were rivals in the ring but close friends in real life. But today, in this ring, they both carried the desire to defeat each other. Both of them entered the match smoothly. Punches and kicks were thrown continuously. In the first round, Johnny dominated the ring with a roundhouse kick that knocked Baylor down on the spot, but he quickly got back up and entered the second round. In the second round, the two friends charged at each other again, going at it fiercely. Baylor seemed to have regained his form. He landed a straight punch to Johnny's jaw, making him stagger and raise his elbow to block. The match was extremely intense. Although Johnny gave it his all with the enthusiastic cheers and support from the audience, Baylor didn't have time to think much. At that moment, the only thing burning in his mind was the desire to win. But he had no idea that his relentless, thunderous punches to Johnny would later cause a tragedy in the ring that he would regret for the rest of his life. Because just as Baylor officially knocked Johnny out, he was extremely excited, and in the midst of celebrating, Johnny was already completely unconscious and showed no signs of life. Everyone tried to help him regain consciousness, but it seemed pointless. He had been killed by Baylor's punches. It wasn't until Johnny's girlfriend called out to him for help that Baylor realized what had happened. He went back to Johnny, but it seemed like everything was already too late. Johnny was rushed to the emergency room immediately, but nothing could change the outcome. He was dead. By then, everyone else had already left. On the once glorious ring, only Baylor remained, along with his belated tears of regret. 6 months later, after his friend's death, Baylor still couldn't escape his suffering. He moved to Thailand and lived in a small house. Day after day, he drowned himself in alcohol. He used alcohol and tranquilizers to try to heal his wounds, but every time he slept, nightmares tormented him. Johnny's girlfriend's questions kept haunting his mind, making every day feel like an endless nightmare. Baylor constantly participated in fights, using his fists to vent the turmoil inside him. He wished someone would beat him to death with their fists, just as he had beaten his friend to death. But the more he tried to do so, the stronger he seemed to become. All the fighters who faced him suffered miserable defeats. If they didn't lose a few teeth, they'd break some ribs, while he remained completely unscathed, which only made his reputation spread even further. The wealthy kept throwing money to invite him to participate in matches. This time, at the ring hosted by the wealthy, he was invited to fight a formidable opponent. The match was intense, taking place amid the cheers and shouts of hundreds of spectators. The two fighters charged at each other like two hungry tigers, one of them wanting to vent the pain inside, threw punches as if to shatter the sky. The other, not wanting to let the generous prize slip away, also attacked with all his might. Countering his opponent, Baylor, who had years of fighting experience, immediately landed several steel-hard punches. But his opponent was no pushover either. Not only did he use his fists and feet to attack, but he even bit Baylor on the neck. This drove Baylor into a rage. He unleashed a relentless barrage of punches, knocking his opponent out on the spot. The match left the wealthy spectators thoroughly entertained and extremely excited. Baylor's talent caught the eye of one of the rich men there, Adkins. He worked as a promoter for fighters. He approached Baylor to invite him to participate in a boxing match in Myanmar, with a prize of $500,000 if he won, far more than the small change Baylor earned at these local rings. Baylor initially turned down the offer. However, Adkins told him that just one match would be enough for him to live comfortably for the rest of his life, then left after handing Baylor his business card. Back at home, Baylor found himself thinking about his friend and the unfulfilled dream he had of owning a house by the sea. Wanting to fulfill his friend's unfinished dream, Baylor decided to fly out and accept the fight. He set his price at $1 million with Adkins, and Adkins agreed. Then quickly sent someone to bring a helicopter to pick him up. But Baylor had no idea that this trip was not leading him to a martial arts match, but instead he would be facing a deadly manhunt. Adkins took him to a remote area in Myanmar and introduced him to a group of people who had nothing to do with being fighters. There was a famous bullfighter, the father and son duo of the tea-billing family, a game designer, and Sophia, a wealthy heiress worth billions. All of these people were filthy rich and had grown bored of hunting animals, so they wanted to hunt humans for a change of pace and excitement. Before he could understand what was happening, there was no arena and no fighters in sight. Adkins told him that the ground beneath his feet was the arena, and the people he had just met would be his opponents. He tossed him a bag of rubies worth $1 million. His task was simple. If he could make it across the Thai border, the reward would be his. It was only then that he realized he had been deceived. Adkins wasn't some bodyguard promoter at all. He was someone who specialized in inventing entertainment for the rich and making millions from it. Even the military here had been bribed by him. Adkins threw him an empty water bottle and gave him 2 minutes to run. They released 2 prisoners as an example, but before those 2 could get very far, they were shot dead. Baylor realized this was a human hunting game. He couldn't possibly agree to take part in this game and intended to leave, but before he could turn around, the armed soldiers blocked his way. Faced with this situation, Baylor had no choice but to participate if he didn't want to die a meaningless death. He quickly grabbed a water bottle and ran into the forest. Andrick collected all the participants' phones to make sure no information about his dirty game would leak out. The participants quickly chose their weapons and began the hunt for Baylor. The whole group followed the trail, trying to guess which path Baylor would take as they went. One of them thought that since Baylor was carrying an empty water bottle, he would definitely head to a place with water to fill it. So he walked along the stream to look for him. Just as he thought, Baylor was now approaching a waterfall to get water. There he discovered a corpse. He realized that this corpse belonged to someone who had shared his fate. If he didn't escape, he would also die here. Afraid that the water might not be safe, he decided to move to another spot to get water. But before he could drink, the hunter had already found him. He intended to kill Baylor to claim the reward, but luckily the bullet missed and Baylor managed to escape to another spot. Although furious, the hunter immediately took his gun down to search for him. At this moment, Baylor hid underwater and suddenly attacked from behind, knocking the hunter's gun far away. When Baylor was about to finish him off, the man suddenly pulled out a stun gun and pressed it against Baylor, making him fall back in shock. The two of them wrestled underwater for a while. Even though the old bearded man was armed with many weapons, he was no match for Baylor. Baylor used his iron fist to drown him right there, leaving him dead with his eyes open. When the rest of the group arrived and saw their comrade had already been killed, they realized Baylor was not an easy prey to eliminate, but that only made those bloodthirsty hunters even more excited. They enjoyed conquering difficult targets. Baylor kept running, but he was deep in the forest without anything on him. Finding a way out of the border was like looking for a needle in a haystack. He also didn't know that Andrick had planted a tracker on him, so no matter where he went, they could always find him. They quickly located him and pointed a series of weapons at Baylor. Alone and unarmed against a group equipped with advanced weaponry, his only option was to rely on the water to escape. But when one of them fired a heavy weapon, the blast sent him flying high into the air and crashing down into a deep ravine. Fortunately, he rolled down into a nearby stream and bumped into an elephant that was drinking water, so his body was only sore but not injured. There he met a local girl. When she learned that he was being hunted by some people, she asked him about her brother's whereabouts. Her brother was also being hunted and had been missing for many days, but no one could find him. When he said that he needed to get to the border and was about to leave, he realized he was heading in the wrong direction. Seeing this, the girl immediately volunteered to guide him. After 2 encounters where they failed to take him down, Baylor had worn out the entire group of hunters. They realized that Baylor was very skilled at hunting and capturing him was not as easy as they had thought. To reassure everyone, Andrick immediately dispatched 2 military vehicles along with a fully armed squad. Meanwhile, as he followed the girl, Baylor learned that her brother had been tricked into transporting drugs and then disappeared. Many people from their village had also mysteriously vanished in the same way. They guessed that the missing people had become entertainment for the rich, but there was nothing they could do about it. Baylor also told the girl the reason why he was here. As the two of them were heading in the right direction and it seemed Baylor would successfully cross the border, at that moment, Andrick used the tracker to locate their position. He even seemed excited to add the girl to his list of prey. When they reached the temple, he had figured out the way forward and not wanting the girl to get involved because of him, he said goodbye to her. It was only at this moment that they learned each other's names. The girl's name was Tha. As he was trying to persuade Tha not to follow him, Sophia and a motorcyclist suddenly appeared. He bravely leapt into the air, spreading his legs and kicking both of them off the bike. Then he grabbed an umbrella as Sophia chased after him. Sophia's vehicle was equipped with guns, so as Baylor ran ahead, she chased after him, continuously shooting at him. Fortunately, Baylor managed to escape. He also noticed that his car was equipped with a net, so he immediately pressed the button to launch the net at her. The net caused Sophia to fall to the ground, but she quickly got up and drew her weapon to fight back against Baylor. Because his opponent was a woman, he held back quite a bit. However, this woman was extremely fierce and aggressive. Every move she made was meant to take Baylor's life, but she was no match for him. If she wanted to fight, he would fight her to the end. With just a few moves, he subdued her, but in the end, he didn't kill her. He spared her life and quickly got in his car and drove away. Meanwhile, at Tha's location, the father and son hunters also found her. They attacked her, but since she had never killed anyone before, Tha was quite cautious. The father, seeing that Tha was attractive, immediately had wicked intentions. As for Tha, she wasn't the son's type, so he walked away. Just as the old pervert was about to assault her, Tha used her sharp teeth to bite his thigh, making him scream in pain. At that moment, Baylor rode his motorcycle back to look for Tha. He saw one of the men and immediately kicked him away, then rushed to rescue Tha. Just as she was about to turn the old pervert into minced meat, the two of them quickly made their escape. When Andrick and his men arrived, all that was left was the old pervert's corpse. After seeing his father die so tragically, the old man's son began to feel afraid and wanted to give up, but Andrick did not allow him to quit. He taunted him saying that a woman had killed his father. So since his father's mission was unfinished, he had to continue it. By this time, Tha and Baylor had already gotten quite far away, but since it was her first time killing someone, Tha was haunted and traumatized. Baylor reassured her that in that situation she had no other choice. It was either be killed or kill him. While they were talking, Tha noticed that Baylor was wounded in the shoulder. She persuaded him to come to her small hut so she could treat his injury. They had a brief period to rest and recover their strength. At this point, Tha also told him that there used to be a native village in this forest. But ever since it was bought, all the villagers were driven away. Only 2 siblings stubbornly remained, wanting to keep their ancestral land. Nevertheless, fearing that their pursuers would find them, they couldn't stay there long and both had to set out immediately. But they hadn't gone far when they discovered the charred remains of animals and realized that ahead of them was a minefield they couldn't cross on their own. Andrzej had also managed to track them down and was now close by. To lure the enemy, Baylor shot an arrow at their vehicle. Just as he predicted, one of them threw a spear in his direction. The spear struck a mine, causing it to explode. The force of the blast flung Baylor quite far. Fortunately, he was unharmed. The human hunters realized the danger, so they didn't dare move forward. They thought Baylor was trapped in the minefield and couldn't get out, so the youngest one picked up a gun and moved in, wanting to kill him to avenge his father. But Baylor quickly leapt up and shot an arrow into his chest, causing him to fall and trigger a mine, blowing himself to pieces. Taking advantage, the two continued their escape, but now Baylor firmly insisted Tha leave. He feared she would get caught up in trouble because of him, but Tha refused to go. She led him to a secret hiding place that only she knew about, a cave in the mountains. When they entered the cave, Tha found her brother hiding there, but he was seriously injured. The hunters also came close to the cave, but because it was a limestone cave, the signal was lost, so they couldn't find Baylor. They decided to set up camp and spend the night there, planning to continue searching for both of them the next day. Inside the cave, when Tha's brother saw Baylor, he thought Baylor was also one of the pursuers and became extremely frightened. But after being reassured by both of them and learning that Baylor was also being hunted just like him, he finally calmed down. Meanwhile, outside, during a conversation among the hunters, Andrzej revealed that he used to work for the CIA, but because he was too boastful and arrogant, he was never valued. Wanting to prove that he had his own way, he came up with the idea of colluding with the warden to capture death row inmates and force them to participate in this human hunting game, making money while also entertaining himself. What a true psychopath. That night, while sleeping in the cave, Baylor had another nightmare. Unable to hide it from Tha, he told her about the terrible things he had experienced and the reason why he joined this game. The next morning when he woke up, Tha and her brother were nowhere to be seen. His ruby pouch had also been taken by the two of them. Because the pouch contained a tracker, the two siblings were quickly caught by Andrzej's men. Although they were interrogated, neither of them revealed Baylor's hiding place. Baylor followed Tha's cries to find them. From a distance, he saw the graphic designer resuming the group's activities. He quickly subdued him and seized the camera he had been using to film. After that, Baylor used the designer to force Andrzej to release Tha and her brother. At this point, he had already lost quite a few clients and didn't want to lose anyone else. Baylor escorted the graphic designer so that Tha and her brother could escape, while he advanced to confront the hunters. A dramatic battle broke out. He engaged in a gunfight with Andrzej's right-hand man. Baylor fired first, grazing Madhu's arm, then kicked his gun off the bridge. As for himself, he jumped into the water to escape. Meanwhile, Tha and her brother managed to escape but ran into Sophia. Tha pushed her brother away to safety, while she stayed behind to face Sophia. The two of them charged at each other in a dramatic one-on-one fight. Taking advantage of the moment when she fell against the bridge railing, Tha leapt up and kicked her straight in the stomach, crushing her internal organs and killing her instantly. All three reunited on the river. Baylor questioned why they took his ruby and she replied that she only wanted to buy back her ancestral land. Hearing that, he didn't make things difficult for her any further. He removed the memory card from the graphic designer's camera and threw the camera into the river. At that moment, on the riverbank, Andrzej's group happened to find the camera and guessed that the graphic designer had dared to disobey Andrzej's orders. Despite his desperate pleas, Andrzej was furious and immediately slit the graphic designer's throat with a knife. At this point, only the hunter was left. But now, this hunt was no longer just his business, it was also Andrzej's, because if Baylor managed to get the memory card across the border, Andrzej would spend the rest of his life behind bars. He couldn't let Baylor escape. As for Baylor's group, they had made it to the riverbank. At this moment, Andrzej also tracked them down using the locator. Noticing something was off after being repeatedly tracked down, Baylor suspected there was an issue with the ruby pouch, so he checked and discovered a tracker hidden inside it. Baylor decided to turn the tables and use their own plan against them. He handed the ruby pouch to Tha and had them take a different route, while he took the tracker and led the pursuers in another direction. He managed to find a motorboat and stole some weapons from the military. After that, he headed straight toward the hunters. As soon as Andrzej saw Baylor, he ordered his men to open fire on him, but Baylor threw a grenade at them and made his escape. Letting his prey slip away made Andrzej furious, so he immediately sent more men to chase after Baylor. On the other hand, the only remaining hunter still alive. He no longer followed Andrzej's orders and instead went after the Tha brothers. However, this guy also had a preference for fighting hand-to-hand rather than using guns. Seeing this, Tha's older brother rushed in to attack him, but was immediately taken down with a sword. After defeating Tha's older brother, he turned around, grabbed Tha and forced her underwater. Seeing his sister in danger, Win immediately used the spear to stab him from behind, causing him to fall into the water. When he tried to swim back up, Win stabbed him again in the chest, sending him down to the river to meet the river god. Baylor's speedboat was surrounded by Andrek's men both in the air and underwater. This time he was determined to kill everyone to silence them, so he acted with extreme brutality. With the speedboat damaged, Baylor had no choice but to jump ashore. As soon as he got ashore, he ran into a few more of Andrek's henchmen, but he quickly snatched their guns and took down the rest. Just as he was about to cross into Thai territory, Andrek and his men were already blocking the bridge. Ignoring all morals, Andrek took innocent civilians there as hostages, forcing Baylor to surrender. Not wanting innocent people to be implicated because of him, he stepped forward. Andrek interrogated him about the memory card, and when he refused to talk, Andrek struck him in the stomach with a baton. Not only that, he also prepared a group of assassins to destroy him. Even though he was a boxer, he was still at a disadvantage against so many assassins. After being attacked by them, Baylor regained his fighting spirit and took down each of them one by one. When Andrek's henchmen stepped in, this time Baylor had figured out his weakness and quickly sent him packing as well. With his henchmen defeated, Andrek could no longer just sit back and watch. He tried to shoot Baylor, but Baylor quickly used his henchmen as a human shield, then leapt up and kicked Andrek, catching him off guard and knocking him to the floor. After that, Baylor rewarded him with a few punches, taking out his front line for good. But at that moment, the military forces that Andrek had bribed also arrived. They were about to attack Baylor when Cha rushed over. She used the rubies that Baylor had given her to bribe them. Money talks, and whoever pays more wins. When the soldiers turned on him, Andrek angrily tried to grab one of their guns and ended up getting his head blown off. He had to die to put an end to the twisted, depraved games he created and to atone for the innocent lives lost because of him. The army also withdrew, returning the land to them. Cha also gave back half of the rubies to Baylor so he could buy a seaside villa. He decided not to return but to stay with Cha and open a martial arts class for the children there. At the end of the film, Baylor receives a letter from Johnny's family along with a photo of the house by the sea. They did not blame him and understood the remorse he was going through. He was not at fault. The burden he had carried in his heart for so long was finally laid to rest. He also forgave himself. In the days to come, he could finally live peacefully with his loved ones. Of all the suffering that people endure, no matter how many tranquilizers you take, they can never truly help you overcome that pain. Only love and forgiveness are the best medicine for each person, no matter where or when. And with this scene, the movie has come to an end. What did you think of this film? Leave a comment to let me know. If you enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel to support me in making more videos for you all. Thank you all so much and see you next time.